So two parables today, one in our first reading in the 9th chapter of Judges, and then a familiar parable here in the 20th chapter of Matthew. And again, parables have many different layers and meanings. And I think the truest sense of the parable here is the general idea that everyone comes into the vineyard or everyone comes to faith at different times, right? Whether on their deathbed, think of the good thief, Dismas. And so there's this aspect of God's generosity, of his grace. But just to say a word on maybe similar to how we looked this past weekend on the Canaanite, looking at the level of the heart with the Canaanite woman and the encounter there with Jesus. Just want to look at, again, the level of the heart as it relates to envy. His question there, the landowner's question to the workers, are you envious because I am generous? Right, and the answer to that is like, yes, like that's the problem here. They're envious. As humans, we're being fallen, we tend to want more and more and more. And when we look at what others have, again, because we're fallen, it's a common experience that most of us have. You see the bigger home. You see somebody who's more popular. You see somebody who's better looking. You see somebody just nicer car. When you notice a sorrow inside, when there's a hint of sorrow in you, when you see someone else has something that you don't have, that's envy. I remember after I think it was early on, maybe my first year in seminary, I was doing reading on envy, something that I'd never really considered. I'd heard about jealousy, but really like zoning in on the sorrow part. I remember it was like that next week, there was just a couple things that came up. One of them, was just a silly, I might have shared it before, just somebody on the seminarian basketball team. The seminarian basketball team, okay, was better than me in basketball. All right, there's actually two of them better than me. And I noticed sorrow. Like I had sorrow in my heart. And it was so ugly. Like noticing it, really noticing envy and what it is, and noticing my heart for the first time of that envy, of the sorrow for this other person having what I don't have. And that opened the floodgates to more. I'm noticing it more and more in my heart. And Augustine said, envy is the ulcer of the soul. Envy is the ulcer of the soul. So again, an ulcer is this open wound in the stomach. And it's, bleeding envy, this intense feeling of discontent, negative attitude, negative emotion, bitterness. Okay, envy is the ulcer of the soul. John Chrysostom also said, envy is the mother of murder. Okay, envy leads to murder. Maybe the actual murdering, physical murdering someone, but also just the hate, the murder through hatred in our heart for somebody. So I just want to offer three things of maybe antidotes to envy. One, practice gratitude. Thanking God for the blessings that he's given us. Two, avoiding gossip and negative talk. Engaging in gossip and negative talk about others fosters envy. It conditions us to be envious and have sorrow in our heart. It may just start off about, negative talk, gossip here and there with friends, and it fosters envy. And then third is just to acknowledge it. Similar to back in first year in seminary for me, just acknowledging it. Okay, now I'm acknowledging that sorrow in my heart here. I'm able now just to, with now acknowledging it, bring it to Christ. Lord, I am a broken person. Like I've got some brokenness really deep in me for me to have sorrow for this person who's better than me in basketball. But without really acknowledging it and kind of just being like, there's just a little bad feeling there. I'm just going to like not pay attention to it. And no, I'm going to acknowledge it, sit with it, and bring it to Christ. Those are maybe 3 ways to overcome antidotes to envy. And maybe just the last thing is to say, in a sense, we all represent those workers that are only working for 1 hour. Because none of us deserve or can earn salvation. So every one of us are those workers that just go in the field for 1 hour and get the full pay, if you will. God's generosity of what he's done for us in the midst of our brokenness, and we notice the sorrow in our heart for someone who's got the bigger house that I don't have, or all that. My goodness, the Lord went to the cross and died for me for that. To defeat in me what I can't fix in myself. Through his grace. So let us remember that we're all that one worker as we turn to we're all those workers that work for just 1 hour, in a sense, as we turn to the Lord in the Eucharist to receive him and to thank him, to count our blessings, generosity, to avoid the gossiping and negative talk, and then also just to acknowledge our brokenness and bring it to the Lord.